the last echo of a humming song. She sat very still, staring down at her hands. They should have been shaking. She expected them to be, but they weren't. They were as calm as the winter air outside. On this day of all days, she waited for the tremors. They never came. She leaned her head back against the high wooden frame of her rocking chair, letting its slow rhythm against the floor carry her. Back and forth. She closed her eyes, and the walls of the room dissolved, giving way to the ghosts of her childhood. The house had always been a paradox. Even in the brutal heat of August, the hallway felt like a tomb, cold, unnatural. When she was 7, she used to burst through the front door, running straight to her mother's kitchen. That was where safety lived. Her mother was not a woman of classic beauty, but her eyes held a light so warm, so steady, that the girl felt seen, reflected, whole. While her mother cooked, she hummed, a low, wordless melody that drifted through the steam of the pots. It was the sound of safety. But every afternoon, without fail, when the clock on the mantel struck 3, the humming stopped. Mid-note. The girl would watch her mother's spine stiffen at the sound of a key grinding into the lock. Her father never needed to raise his voice to be violent. His cruelty was quiet, suffocating. He left bruises that never showed on the skin. Some were shaped like silence, others like a sneer. She grew up wondering what sin her mother had committed to deserve such a man, and why, if he hated them so deeply, he stayed. Why he didn't simply vanish and haunt another family instead. "He loves us in his own way," her mother once whispered, pulling her onto a lap that smelled of flour and grief. Even then, the girl knew it was a lie. Love was not supposed to hollow you out. The memory of the painting still burned. She had come home clutching a blue ribbon, her heart racing with the pride of a child who had finally done something worthy. Her father didn't even look up from his pipe. He tossed the painting aside like junk mail. Later, she found it on the coffee table, used as a coaster. A brown ring of dried coffee stained the paper, blotting out the blue ribbon completely. Years passed, and the house grew colder. Her mother aged quickly, as if time clung to her harder than it should have. Her face became a map of unspoken pain. When the sickness came, it felt like the house was finally winning. She was a teenager by then. She hid behind the bedroom door the day the old family doctor stopped smiling. The same doctor who used to give her lemon drops. "There's nothing left to do," he whispered. The afternoon that changed everything arrived quietly. She cracked her mother's bedroom door open, carrying a glass of water. She stopped when she saw her father's broad back at the bedside. At first, she thought he was adjusting the pillows. Then she saw his hands. They moved with terrifying calm, with purpose. He pressed the weight of the linen down over her mother's face. She watched, frozen, as her mother's hand clawed weakly at the air. Minutes passed, agonizing minutes. Then the hand fell still. When he lifted the pillow, her mother's eyes were open, but the light was gone. The shine that had been her only North Star had vanished. She fled to her room. She didn't scream. She let the horror harden inside her. Cold, black. In the months that followed, she became the ghost of the house. She cooked, she cleaned, and she began her careful work. Every meal she served him carried a measured dose of his end. She watched him weaken, watched his cruel, proud body bend beneath the weight of his so-called sickness. She felt no pity, only a slow, simmering satisfaction as he twitched and groaned. On his final night, he collapsed on the floor, surrounded by the remains of his last meal. She knelt beside him. She leaned close and whispered everything. She told him she had seen the pillow. She told him she knew what he had done. She told him she was the one killing him. She expected fear. She expected him to beg. Instead, a trembling smile touched his lips. With his last strength, he reached into the pocket of his robe and pressed a crumpled piece of paper into her hand. Then, with one final shudder, he was gone. The letter was written in her mother's shaky, elegant hand. It was not a plea. It was an apology. "My darling girl, please forgive your father. I can no longer bear the pain of this cancer. I begged him to help me leave this world in peace. It was the hardest thing I ever asked of him. But he did it because he loved me more than his own soul. Do not hate him for my cowardice." The rocking chair stopped. The woman opened her eyes to the darkening room. The letter lay in her lap, worn thin from years of folding and unfolding. Tears burned her eyes like shards of ice. She stood slowly and walked to the bathroom. She returned with her father's old straight razor. Sitting once more by the window, she watched the sun sink below the horizon. The only sound in the room was a steady rhythm. Drip, drip, drip. As the light faded from the sky, the light in her eyes went out as well, leaving them dull, empty, just like her mother's.